The summer of 2019 should have been perfect. The Hendersons, Mark, his wife Sophia, and their 2 children had saved for 3 years to afford a month-long trip to Europe. It was their dream vacation, meticulously planned down to every museum visit in Paris, every gondola ride in Venice, every sunset in Santorini. They left their suburban Massachusetts home in the care of Mark's mother, Eleanor, a woman known for her practicality and unwavering devotion to family. What they returned to was a house stripped bare, a shell of memories sold to strangers, a lifetime of possessions reduced to cash, and a family fractured by a single, devastating sentence. This is not a story about greed or dementia. It's far stranger, far more heartbreaking. And it reveals something profound about trust, communication, and the fragile architecture of family bonds. June 15, 2019, Sophia zipped the last suitcase, while Mark triple-checked their passports. 10-year-old Emma bounced excitedly, clutching her travel journal. 7-year-old Lucas played with his favorite toy robot on the living room carpet, a vintage 1980s collectible Mark had cherished since childhood, now passed down with ceremonial importance. Eleanor arrived at 6 a.m., her silver hair neatly pinned, carrying her signature blueberry scones. She'd stayed with the family before during shorter trips, a long weekend here, a week there. She knew where the emergency contacts were posted, how temperamental the basement water heater could be, which drawer held the takeout menus. She was family. She was trusted. "Don't worry about a thing," Eleanor said, kissing Sophia's cheek. "You've worked so hard for this. Just go and make beautiful memories." Mark hugged his mother, breathing in her familiar lavender perfume. "We'll call when we land in London. The neighbor has our number if anything happens. The house is yours, Mom. The house is yours." 4 words. Innocent. Conventional. Spoken a million times by a million children to their parents. 4 words that would be catastrophically misunderstood. The sentence that changed everything. The Hendersons' first week passed in a blur of jet lag and wonder. They video called Eleanor twice, brief, cheerful check-ins where she assured them everything was fine. The garden was thriving, and she was keeping busy. Nothing seemed amiss. What they didn't know was that on day 3 of their trip, Eleanor received a phone call that would alter the trajectory of their lives. It was from a woman named Patricia Delgado, someone Eleanor had befriended at her community center book club. Patricia worked in estate planning and had recently started a side business, helping seniors downsize and liquidate assets. Over coffee that week, Patricia had mentioned her services, and Eleanor had listened with polite interest. Then Patricia said something during a follow-up call that landed with unexpected weight. "Eleanor, you're living in their house. But when was the last time you truly lived in your own space? At our age, we need to think about simplifying, about having our own independence while we still can." That sentence, delivered with no malicious intent, simply conversational, ignited something in Eleanor's mind. She had recently turned 74. Her own small condo felt increasingly isolating. She'd been sleeping in the Henderson guest room for nearly 2 weeks, surrounded by her son's life, his success, his family's abundance. And Mark's parting words echoed, "The house is yours, Mom." In Eleanor's mind, exhausted from years of widowhood and creeping irrelevance, those words began to transform. Not, "The house is yours to care for," but, "The house is yours, your space, your fresh start, your chance to reclaim independence." She didn't hear it as temporary permission. She heard it as a gift. A transfer. A solution to her loneliness. Within 48 hours, Eleanor had made the decision that would devastate her family. By day 10 of the Henderson vacation, Eleanor had contacted Patricia's liquidation service. By day 14, estate sale professionals were walking through the house, appraising furniture, electronics, collectibles, and personal items. Eleanor answered every question with clarity and confidence. Yes, she had authority. Yes, this was her decision. Yes, she understood the process. The living room sofa where Sophia had nursed both babies sold to a young couple for $400. Mark's vintage record collection, accumulated over 20 years, purchased by a music enthusiast for $1,200. Emma's carefully organized bookshelf of first editions and signed children's Books boxed up and auctioned online. Lucas's toy robot $85 to a collector who didn't know it had been a father's childhood treasure. Family photographs were sorted into boxes marked keep and discard, based on Eleanor's perception of their importance. Sophia's grandmother's china, the set brought from Colombia in 1962, was wrapped and sold to an antique dealer who paid in cash. The children's artwork, taped lovingly to the refrigerator, was thrown away as clutter. Eleanor worked with methodical purpose, believing she was simplifying, preparing her new space, following through on what she thought was her son's blessing. She felt empowered. She felt purposeful. She felt, for the first time in years, like she mattered. July 14, 2019. The Hendersons' flight landed at Logan International at 7 p.m. They were sunburned, exhausted, and happy, carrying bags of souvenirs, their phones filled with thousands of photos. Mark had joked during the flight that the hardest part of vacation was always coming home to reality. He had no idea how true that would be. They pulled into their driveway at 9:15 p.m. The first sign was subtle: the living room curtains were different. Sophia noticed immediately. "Did your mom redecorate?" Mark laughed. Knowing her, she probably deep cleaned and rearranged things. They opened the front door. The living room was empty. Not rearranged. Empty. Sophia's hand flew to her mouth. Mark dropped the suitcases. Emma grabbed her father's arm, confused. Lucas began to cry, though he didn't yet understand why. The house was a museum of absence. The dining table where they'd celebrated birthdays gone. The couch where they'd watched movies as a family vanished. Bookshelves stood naked. Walls bore rectangular shadows where framed photographs once hung. Mark's voice cracked. "Mom?" Eleanor emerged from the kitchen, drying her hands on a dish towel, wearing an expression of pride mixed with exhaustion. "Oh, you're back. I didn't expect you until tomorrow. I've been working so hard to get everything ready." "Ready for what?" Sophia whispered, her voice barely audible. "Where is everything? Where are our things?" Eleanor's smile faltered. I sold them. Like you said I could. Like you wanted. I thought, Mark, you told me the house was mine. I thought you were giving me a fresh start, a chance to make this my space. Patricia helped me understand what you really meant." "What I meant?" Mark's voice rose to a shout. "I meant watch the house while we were gone. I didn't mean sell everything we own." The color drained from Eleanor's face. "But you said the house was mine." The police were called, though no crime had technically been committed. Eleanor had legal access to the home. She had violated no breaking and entering laws. The estate sale company had documentation of her authorization. Legally, it was a civil matter, a catastrophic misunderstanding between family members. But the damage was irreversible. Mark's vintage record collection? Scattered to dozens of buyers across 3 states. Sophia's grandmother's china? Already shipped to a buyer in Oregon. The children's beloved possessions? Sold, discarded, or donated before anyone realized the magnitude of the mistake. The financial loss was estimated at over $75,000, not including the irreplaceable sentimental value. Insurance wouldn't cover it. This wasn't theft or natural disaster. It was family dysfunction taken to its most extreme conclusion. But the real cost was something no appraiser could measure. In the weeks that followed, as therapists and family counselors tried to piece together the catastrophe, a clearer picture emerged. Eleanor hadn't experienced a psychotic break. She wasn't suffering from undiagnosed dementia. Medical evaluations found her cognitively intact. What she had experienced was a perfect storm of loneliness, misinterpretation, and external influence. Patricia Delgado's innocent comment about Eleanor deserving her own space had planted a seed. Mark's casual phrase, "The house is yours," had provided the water and sunlight. Eleanor's isolation and fear of irrelevance had made the soil fertile. In her mind, she had constructed an entire narrative. Her son, seeing her loneliness, had given her his house. He was financially successful, he could buy another. This was his way of caring for her, without the awkwardness of a direct conversation. The vacation was a cover, a way to let her transition without confrontation. She had convinced herself so thoroughly that, when the estate sale crew asked if she was sure, she had been offended by the question. Of course she was sure. This was her son's gift to her. I thought I was being responsible. Eleanor later told a therapist, tears streaming down her face. I thought I was finally doing something right. Taking charge of my life like everyone always said I should. I thought he was proud of me. This story went viral in 2019, shared across social media, with reactions ranging from disbelief to horror to dark humor. But beneath the shocking surface lies a truth that haunts far more families than we'd like to admit. We communicate in shortcuts. We trust in assumptions. We mistake brevity for clarity. How many times do we say, "Make yourself at home," without defining the boundaries? How often do we tell elderly parents, "Whatever you need," without specifying what that actually means? How frequently do we assume that shared context, the understood rules of family relationships, will protect us from catastrophic misunderstanding? The Hendersons' tragedy wasn't really about one sentence. It was about 1,000 unspoken ones. About a widowed mother who felt invisible. About a son who loved his mother but never asked about her loneliness. About a culture that worships independence and self-sufficiency, to the point where asking for clarification feels like weakness. Eleanor didn't sell everything out of malice. She sold everything out of hope. That might be the most heartbreaking part of all. The Hendersons and Eleanor attempted mediation. Lawyers became involved. Eleanor liquidated her retirement savings to provide restitution, a fraction of what was lost, and a gesture that left her financially devastated. Mark and Sophia tried to forgive, but every empty corner of their home screamed accusation. The children struggled most. Emma developed anxiety about possessions, hiding her favorite items in places even her parents couldn't find. Lucas stopped forming attachments to toys, assuming everything would eventually disappear. Eleanor moved into a small apartment, estranged from the son. She thought she was helping. She spent her remaining years in therapy, trying to understand how her mind had constructed such an elaborate misunderstanding. She died in 2023, never having fully reconciled with her son. Mark kept his mother's last voicemail, recorded 3 days before her death. In it, she says simply, "I'm so sorry. I really thought I was doing the right thing. I really thought you wanted me to be happy." He's never been able to delete it. He's never been able to listen to it all the way through. This story should terrify us, not because it's unique, but because it's not. Every day, families communicate in half sentences and assumptions. Every day, elderly parents interpret kindness as obligation, or obligation as kindness, or generosity as something else entirely. Every day, someone says, "The house is yours," without realizing those 4 words can mean a dozen different things depending on who's listening. The Hendersons' tragedy is a mirror. When we look into it, we see our own incomplete conversations, our own unverified assumptions, our own elderly relatives, whom we love but don't truly know anymore. We see the sentences we've spoken without considering how they might land in a lonely mind. We see the times we've said, "Don't worry about anything," when we should have said, "Here's exactly what I need." We see the moments we've confused casualness with clarity. And if we're honest, we see the terrifying truth: it could happen to any of us. Because the distance between "watch my house" and "take my house" is shorter than we think. It's the distance of a single sentence, misheard in the echoed chamber of isolation. The Henderson home was eventually refurnished. New furniture, new possessions, new photos on new walls. But Sophia says it never felt the same. "You can replace things," she told a reporter in 2021. "You can't replace the version of your life that existed before everything changed." We lost more than furniture that summer. We lost the ability to trust that people hear what we mean, not just what we say. Mark was asked what he wished he'd done differently. He stared at the question for a long time before answering. "I wish I'd said, 'I love you, and I trust you to care for our home while we're gone. We'll be back in a month. And then we'll help you figure out what you need to feel less alone.'" But that felt like too many words. It turns out, it was exactly enough.